The fluorescent lights of Millie's diner hummed their familiar tune at 2:30 in the morning, a sound Hannah Brooks had grown so accustomed to that she barely noticed it anymore. She stood behind the counter, wiping down the already spotless surface for the third time that hour, her reflection staring back at her from the chrome coffee maker. 26 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dark circles under her green eyes that no amount of concealer could hide anymore. Outside, the highway stretched into darkness, occasionally interrupted by the passing headlights of a long-haul truck or a desperate traveler pushing through the night. The diner sat at the edge of a small city about 40 miles outside of Chicago, one of those places that existed primarily because people needed somewhere to stop between where they were and where they were going. Hannah glanced at the clock. 2:33. Another 4.5 hours until her shift ended. Then she'd drive home to her cramped studio apartment, sleep for maybe 5 hours if she was lucky, and return for the evening shift at 3. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she left her small hometown in Indiana 3 years ago, full of dreams about graphic design and maybe eventually her own studio. But life had a way of laughing at plans. "You're doing it again," Rita called from the kitchen window. The older woman, somewhere in her late 50s with gray-streaked hair and a perpetual expression of world-weary wisdom, was the closest thing Hannah had to family in this city. That thing where you stare into space like you're trying to figure out where everything went wrong. Hannah managed a small smile. "Just thinking. Thinking don't pay the bills, honey. And it definitely don't make the time go faster." Rita disappeared back into the kitchen, probably to work on her crossword puzzle. Tuesday nights, technically Wednesday mornings, were always slow. Most weeks they'd see maybe 5 customers between midnight and 6 a.m. Hannah moved to refill the coffee pot, more out of habit than necessity. The ritual was comforting. Scoop the grounds, pour the water, press the button, wait for the familiar gurgling sound. Simple, predictable, safe. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, a text from her landlord, reminding her that rent was due in 5 days, as if she could forget, as if the number wasn't already burned into her mind, keeping her awake during those precious few hours she should be sleeping. She was short. Again. The second job she'd picked up doing online freelance work wasn't bringing in enough. Not consistently. She'd have to ask for another advance, which meant another conversation with Frank, the owner, who was generous but whose patience was clearly wearing thin. 26 years old and still living paycheck to paycheck, still one unexpected expense away from complete disaster. The bell above the door chimed. Hannah looked up automatically, her customer service smile already forming. "Welcome to Millie's." The words died in her throat. The man who stepped through the door wasn't like their usual late-night customers. He wore an expensive dark coat. Even from across the room, Hannah could tell it probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His black hair was slightly disheveled, and even in the harsh fluorescent lighting he carried himself with a presence that seemed to fill the entire diner. But that wasn't what made Hannah freeze. It was the baby in his arms. A child, maybe a year old, was nestled against the man's chest, tiny head resting on his shoulder, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. One small hand clutched a worn teddy bear, the kind that had clearly been loved intensely and often. The baby was sound asleep, completely peaceful, completely trusting. The man's eyes scanned the diner, a quick, practiced assessment that felt almost military in its efficiency. Then those eyes landed on Hannah. They were dark, almost black in this lighting, and there was something in them that made her breath catch. Not threat exactly, but certainly wariness. The look of someone who was used to calculating risks in every situation. He moved toward the counter with careful, measured steps, each one deliberate, clearly trying not to wake the child. As he got closer, Hannah could see more details. He was probably in his early 30s, tall and clearly fit beneath the expensive coat. His jaw was strong, shadowed with stubble that suggested this wasn't his first sleepless night. And his eyes, now that he was closer, she could see the exhaustion in them. Deep, bone-tired exhaustion that went beyond just missing one night's sleep. But it was the tenderness with which he held the baby that truly struck her. His large hand cradled the child's head with such gentle care, such obvious practice, that it created a jarring contrast with everything else about him. The expensive clothes, the guarded expression, the aura of barely contained power. "Coffee," he said quietly, his voice low and rough, probably from lack of sleep. "Black. Large. Of course." Hannah found her voice, though it came out slightly uncertain. She turned to pour the coffee, grateful for the excuse to break eye contact. Her hands trembled slightly as she filled the large to-go cup. Get it together, she told herself. He's just a customer with a baby. Nothing strange about that, except everything felt strange about it. She'd worked at Millie's for 2 years, had seen countless people come through those doors at all hours. Truckers, travelers, insomniacs, people escaping bad dates or worse relationships, cops on break, nurses after overnight shifts. She'd developed a sixth sense about people, who wanted to chat, who wanted to be left alone, who was harmless, and who wasn't. This man registered as definitely not harmless, but the baby in his arms complicated that assessment in a way that made her brain struggle to process. Anything else? She asked, setting the coffee on the counter and adding a lid. We have fresh pie, apple and cherry, or I could make you a sandwich if you're hungry. He shook his head, shifting the baby slightly. The child stirred, making a small sound, and immediately the man began a gentle rocking motion, so instinctive and natural that Hannah knew he'd done it 1,000 times before. Just the coffee. The baby settled back into sleep and Hannah saw something flash across the man's face. Relief, maybe, or just the bone-deep exhaustion of a parent desperately trying to get their child to rest. How old? She asked before she could stop herself. He looked at her and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer, then 13 months. He's beautiful. The words came out genuine because they were true. Even asleep, she could see the baby's cherubic features, the way his little hand gripped that teddy bear like it was the most precious thing in the world. Something shifted in the man's expression, not quite a smile, but a softening around the edges. His name is Noah. That's a lovely name. Hannah rang up the coffee, told him the price. He pulled out a wallet, black leather, expensive like everything else about him, and handed her a $50 bill for a $4 coffee. Keep it, he said before she could reach for change. Hannah stared at the bill, a $46 tip for 1 coffee. That's too much. I can't. You can. His tone left no room for argument, but it wasn't unkind. You're open when most places aren't. That's worth something. Before she could respond, Noah stirred again, this time more insistently. The baby's face scrunched up, and a small cry escaped. Immediately the man adjusted his hold, bringing the child closer, resuming that gentle rocking motion. He began to sway, just slightly, a movement so practiced it was almost like a dance. Shh, buddy, he murmured, his voice transforming into something soft and soothing. I know you're tired. Just a little longer, okay? We'll get you home soon. Hannah watched, transfixed as this imposing man transformed before her eyes into nothing more than an exhausted father trying to comfort his child. He seemed to forget she was there, focused entirely on Noah, running his hand gently over the baby's back in slow, rhythmic circles. Sometimes driving helps, the man continued in that same soft voice. The movement, the sound of the engine, but we needed to stop for a minute. He trailed off, seeming to realize he was speaking to someone he didn't know. Coffee, Hannah finished gently. You needed coffee. He looked at her, and for just a second, his guard dropped completely. She saw the exhaustion, yes, but also something else. Loneliness, maybe, or just the bone-deep weariness of facing everything alone. Yeah, he said quietly. Coffee. Noah's crying subsided as quickly as it had begun, and the baby settled back into sleep with a shuddering little sigh. The man looked down at his son with an expression of such pure love and relief that Hannah felt something twist in her chest. She'd heard stories about falling for someone in an instant, love at first sight and all that romantic nonsense. She'd never believed it. But this wasn't that. This was something else. This was seeing something true and vulnerable and human in someone you'd expect to be a complete stranger, and feeling that image burn itself into your memory. How long has it been? She asked softly. Since he slept through the night? The man looked surprised at the question, as if he hadn't expected her to ask, or perhaps to care. 3 weeks, maybe 4. He's teething and... He stopped, seemed to reconsider how much to share. He doesn't like sleeping alone, hasn't since... Another pause. For a while now. That must be hard, Hannah said, and meant it. Doing this by yourself. His jaw tightened slightly. What makes you think I'm by myself? Wedding ring tan line, Hannah said, nodding toward his left hand. But no ring. And the way you hold him, that's not someone who gets breaks, who can hand him off to someone else when you're tired. That's someone who's learned to do everything one-handed because there's no other choice. He stared at her for a long moment, and Hannah wondered if she'd overstepped. But then something in his expression shifted again, became almost impressed. "You're observant," he said. "Comes with the job. You learn to read people when you serve them coffee at 3 in the morning." She managed a small smile. "Everyone's got a story. Most of them are written right on their faces if you know how to look." "And what does my face tell you?" Hannah considered him, really looked at him. The expensive clothes that spoke of wealth, the careful, controlled movements that suggested either military training or something else equally disciplined, the wariness in his eyes that never quite disappeared even when he was focused on his son, the exhaustion that went bone deep, and beneath it all, a kind of careful isolation, like he'd built walls so high and so strong that he'd forgotten what it was like on the other side. "You're tired," she said finally. "Not just physically, and you're scared, even though you'd never admit it. Scared something's going to happen to him. Scared you're not doing enough, or doing it wrong. Scared you're going to fail him somehow." The man's expression closed off immediately, walls slamming back into place. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right," Hannah agreed calmly. "I don't. I just know what I see. And I see a father who loves his son enough to drive around at 3 in the morning just to help him sleep. That's not nothing." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The diner was completely silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant sound of Rita moving around in the kitchen. Noah slept on, oblivious to the strange tension in the air. Finally, the man picked up his coffee. "Thank you for the coffee." "You're welcome." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Without turning back, he said, "Cole." "What?" "My name. It's Cole." He glanced over his shoulder, and for just a second that guarded expression softened again. "In case you were wondering." "Hannah," she replied automatically. He nodded once, then pushed through the door and was gone. Through the window, Hannah watched him walk to a black SUV. Expensive, of course. Everything about him screamed money, and carefully strapped Noah into a car seat in the back. The baby didn't even stir. Cole stood there for a moment, just looking at his son, and even from this distance, Hannah could see the weight he carried on his shoulders. Then he got in the driver's seat and pulled away, disappearing into the darkness. Hannah stood at the counter, still holding the $50 bill, staring at the empty parking lot. "Well, that was interesting." Rita's voice made her jump. The older woman had emerged from the kitchen, arms crossed, studying Hannah with knowing eyes. "You know who that was, right?" "A tired father named Cole," Hannah said, moving to put the money in the register. Rita made a sound that was half laugh, half concern. "Honey, that was Cole Matthews." The name meant nothing to Hannah. She looked at Rita, waiting. Rita sighed, moving closer and lowering her voice even though they were alone. "Cole Matthews, as in the Cole Matthews. The one people around here don't talk about much, but everyone knows about. I don't understand." "He's—" Rita paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's a businessman. The kind of businessman whose business you don't ask too many questions about. Old money, family, connected to, let's just say, connected to people and things that regular folks like us should stay far away from." A chill ran down Hannah's spine. "You're saying he's—" "I'm not saying anything," Rita interrupted firmly. "Because around here you don't say things like that out loud. You just know, and you keep your distance. That's how you stay safe." Hannah looked back at the door, at the empty space where Cole had stood just minutes ago. "He had a baby." "I saw. Poor little thing." Rita's expression softened. "I heard his wife passed a couple years back. Car accident, they said. Left him with the boy. By all accounts, he loves that baby more than anything. But that doesn't change what he is, Hannah, or what kind of world he lives in." "What kind of world?" Rita just shook her head. "The kind where people get hurt, where questions aren't appreciated and getting too close to the wrong person can mean serious trouble. I'm just saying, if he comes back, be polite, serve him his coffee, but don't get involved. Don't ask questions. Don't be curious. Just don't." He seemed— Hannah trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Dangerous? Yes, but also exhausted, vulnerable, human. He seemed like he was just trying to take care of his son. Maybe that's all he was doing tonight," Rita conceded. "But it doesn't change the facts. Men like Cole Matthews, they live in a different world than people like us. A world where violence and danger are just part of the daily routine. You can't separate the man from that world, no matter how much you might want to." Hannah wanted to argue, but she didn't know what she'd be arguing for. She'd known Cole for all of 5 minutes. One conversation, one moment of unexpected vulnerability. That didn't mean anything. But she couldn't stop seeing the way he'd held Noah. The gentleness, the love, the exhaustion in his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and worry that went soul deep. "I'm just serving him coffee, Rita," she said finally. "That's all." Rita studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Keep it that way, honey, for your own sake." The rest of the night passed slowly. A trucker came in around 4, ordered eggs and toast, left a decent tip. A young couple stumbled in around 5, clearly coming from a bar somewhere, giggling and drunk on either affection or actual drinks. Hannah served them pancakes and coffee, cleaned up after them, went through the motions. But her mind kept drifting back to Cole Matthews and his son. She thought about what Rita had said, about danger and violence, and a world she should stay far away from. She thought about the warnings in the older woman's voice, the genuine concern. But she also thought about the way Cole's entire being had focused on his son, the practiced rocking motion, the soft voice, the relief when Noah settled back into sleep, the bone-deep exhaustion of someone fighting a battle entirely alone. Whatever else he was, whoever else he was in that moment, he'd just been a father, a tired, worried, devoted father trying his best. By the time 6:30 rolled around and Hannah's replacement, Marcus, different Marcus, not connected to anything, just a college kid working his way through community college, arrived for the morning shift, she was almost convinced she'd imagined the intensity of the encounter. It was just a strange moment, she told herself. A random customer in the middle of the night. It didn't mean anything. She drove home as the sun started to rise, turning the sky that particular shade of orange-pink that she'd normally find beautiful. But today she barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere. In her tiny studio apartment, she dropped her bag by the door and collapsed on her bed, still in her uniform, too tired to even change. She should sleep. She had another shift in 9 hours. She needed the rest. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Cole Matthews standing in the diner, his expensive coat and exhausted eyes, holding his baby son with such infinite care. She could hear his voice, low and rough. His name is Noah. She could see the moment his guard had dropped just for a second, and she'd glimpsed the real person beneath, lonely, scared, fighting something she couldn't name. Hannah opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. She should forget about him. Rita was right. Whatever world Cole Matthews lived in, it wasn't hers. She had enough problems, rent to pay, bills stacking up, a life that felt like it was barely holding together with duct tape and determination. Getting involved with someone like him, even just being curious about him, was asking for trouble she definitely didn't need. But she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at his son, and she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight, something had shifted. That moment of connection, brief as it was, had left an impression she couldn't quite explain. She'd probably never see him again anyway, she told herself. It was a one-time thing, a chance encounter. He'd found what he needed, a quiet place to stop for a few minutes, and now he'd move on with his life. She'd move on with hers. That's how these things worked. With that thought, Hannah finally let her eyes close. But in the last moment before sleep claimed her, she realized she was hoping she was wrong, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she'd see Cole Matthews and his son again, even though she knew she shouldn't hope for anything of the kind, even though Rita's warnings echoed in her mind, even though every logical part of her brain was screaming that curiosity about a man like Cole Matthews was dangerous in ways she probably couldn't even imagine. She hoped anyway, and that, she realized as sleep finally pulled her under, might be the most dangerous thing of all. 5 days passed before Hannah saw Cole Matthews again. 5 days of ordinary shifts, ordinary customers, and an extraordinary amount of time spent wondering why she couldn't stop thinking about a man she'd met for all of 10 minutes. She told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more. The human brain naturally fixated on unusual things, on moments that broke the monotony of everyday life. That's all it was. She almost believed it. It was Monday night, technically Tuesday morning, when the bell above the door chimed at 2:47 a.m. Hannah was refilling the napkin dispensers, her mind half focused on the task and half focused on the fact that her car had made a concerning noise on the drive to work. Another expense she couldn't afford. Another problem without an easy solution. She looked up automatically, and her hands stilled. Cole stood in the doorway, Noah asleep against his shoulder in the same position as before. But this time Hannah noticed more details. The baby was wearing different pajamas, soft green ones with little elephants. Cole's coat was different too, charcoal gray instead of black, but just as expensive. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd showered recently but hadn't bothered to fully dry it. Their eyes met across the empty diner, and something passed between them. Recognition, yes, but also something else. Something that made Hannah's heart beat a little faster. "Coffee?" she asked, finding her voice. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You remember? You're not an easy person to forget," Hannah said, then immediately regretted it. Too honest. Too revealing. But Cole just moved toward the counter with those same careful, measured steps, clearly practiced at moving without disturbing his sleeping child. "Black, large," he confirmed. Hannah turned to pour the coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "Rough night? Is there any other kind?" His voice held a note of dark humor, the kind that came from someone well acquainted with exhaustion. She set the coffee on the counter, added a lid. "Same price as last time, though you don't have to." "I know." He was already pulling out his wallet, already handing her another 50. "Keep it. That's a really generous tip for coffee. It's 3 in the morning and you're here. That deserves more than $4. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most logical thing in the world. Hannah rang it up, put the money in the register. "Thank you, really. It helps more than you know." Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, maybe, or just acknowledgement. "Rent due?" She laughed, surprised by his directness. "Is it that obvious?" I recognized the look, that particular combination of stress and determination. He shifted Noah slightly, the baby making a small sound but not waking. "You're working the overnight shift, which means you're probably working other shifts too. Double shifts, maybe triple if you can get them. And you still look worried about money, which means either you're supporting someone else or you're barely keeping your head above water on your own." Hannah stared at him. "You got all that from looking at me? Like you said the other night, everyone's got a story written on their face if you know how to look." He took a sip of his coffee, watching her over the rim of the cup. "So which is it? Supporting someone or barely making it alone?" She should deflect, should change the subject, should maintain professional distance like Rita had warned her. But something about the directness of his question, the genuine curiosity rather than prying judgment, made her answer honestly. "Alone, and barely making it." She leaned against the counter, suddenly too tired to pretend otherwise. "Rent's due in 2 days. I'm short about $300, and my car made a noise tonight that definitely means I'm going to need a mechanic I can't afford. So yeah, it's one of those weeks." "Months," Cole corrected quietly. "It's one of those months. Probably one of those years." "How did you?" "Because I recognize that look too. The one that says it's not just this week or this month. It's the constant state of things." He paused, seemed to consider something. "What did you come to Chicago for? Originally, I mean. You're not from here. How do you know that?" "Your accent. Midwest, but not Illinois. Indiana, maybe? Ohio?" "Indiana," Hannah admitted, impressed despite herself. "Small town about 3 hours from here. Came here for art school, graphic design, had a scholarship, had a plan, had dreams about opening my own design studio someday." "What happened?" She shrugged, the gesture carrying 3 years of disappointment and compromise. "Life happened. Scholarship only covered tuition, not living expenses. Had to work more hours to pay rent and bills. Working more meant falling behind in classes. Falling behind meant losing the scholarship. Lost the scholarship, couldn't afford to continue. Dropped out, kept working, kept telling myself I'd go back someday." She smiled, but it felt hollow. "That was 2 years ago. I'm still here, still waiting tables, still telling myself it's temporary." Cole was quiet for a long moment, just looking at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Noah stirred against his shoulder, and automatically Cole began that gentle rocking motion, his hand rubbing slow circles on the baby's back. "Dreams don't have expiration dates," he said finally. "They just get harder to reach. That doesn't mean impossible." Spoken like someone who's never had to choose between dreams and rent. You'd be surprised. His expression shifted, became something more guarded. "Money doesn't make everything easy. Sometimes it just changes which problems you have to deal with." Before Hannah could respond, Noah woke up fully this time, his small face scrunching up as he began to cry. Not the desperate wailing of distress, but the tired, frustrated cry of a child who'd been sleeping in a car and wanted his bed. "Hey, buddy," Cole murmured, immediately adjusting his hold, bringing the baby around so he could see his face. I know you're done with this. Just give me a few more minutes, okay?" But Noah wasn't having it. His cries intensified, and his little hands reached for his father's face, the teddy bear falling to the floor. Without thinking, Hannah came around the counter and picked up the bear. "Here, sweetie," she said softly, offering it to Noah. "You dropped your friend." The baby's crying hiccuped to a stop as he focused on her, this new person in his limited world. His eyes, the same dark color as his father's, were wide and wet with tears. He looked at the teddy bear, then at Hannah, then back to the bear. "It's okay," Hannah continued in that same soft voice, stepping closer. "See? He's right here. He didn't go anywhere." Slowly, tentatively, Noah reached out and took the bear, clutching it to his chest. But his eyes stayed on Hannah, curious now rather than upset. "You're good with kids," Cole observed, and there was something in his voice. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. "I used to babysit a lot back home. Neighbors' kids, mostly." Hannah found herself smiling at Noah, who was still studying her with that intense focus only young children seemed capable of. "Hi, Noah. I'm Hannah. Your daddy and I are friends." "Are we?" Cole asked quietly. Hannah looked up at him, and their eyes met over Noah's head. The question felt loaded with meaning beyond the simple words. Were they friends? Could they be? Should they be? "I'd like to think so," she said honestly. "Friends have coffee together at 3 in the morning, right?" Something in Cole's expression softened. That same shift she'd seen before, where the walls came down just slightly, and she glimpsed the real person beneath. "I'd like to think so too." Noah, apparently deciding Hannah was acceptable, reached out his small hands toward her. It was such a trusting gesture, so innocent and pure, that Hannah felt her heart constrict. "Can I?" she asked, looking at Cole. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. The wariness was back in his eyes, that careful calculation. This was his son, the most precious thing in his world, and she was essentially a stranger. But then, slowly, he nodded. Hannah carefully took Noah into her arms, and the baby settled against her immediately, his head resting on her shoulder in the same position he'd been in against his father. He was heavier than she'd expected, solid and warm, and real. She could smell baby shampoo and something sweet, maybe apple juice or fruit. "Hey, little man," she murmured, starting the same gentle rocking motion she'd seen Cole use. "You're tired, aren't you? It's hard being up so late." Cole watched them, and the expression on his face was something Hannah couldn't quite name. Vulnerable, maybe, or just stunned to see his son so comfortable with someone else. "He doesn't usually do that," Cole said quietly. "Doesn't usually go to strangers. Maybe he knows I'm not really a stranger. Maybe he remembers me from last time." She continued the rocking, and Noah's eyes were already starting to droop. "Or maybe he's just so tired he doesn't care who's holding him as long as someone is." "He remembers," Cole said with certainty. "He's smart like that. Remembers faces, remembers voices, remembers his mother's perfume even though—" He stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. Hannah looked at him, saw the pain flash across his face before he could hide it. Rita's words echoed in her mind. "I heard his wife passed a couple years back. Car accident, they said." "I'm sorry," Hannah said softly. "For your loss." Cole's eyes snapped to hers, sharp and defensive. "Who told you?" "Rita, my co-worker. After you left last time. She recognized you." Hannah kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. "She didn't tell me much. Just that you'd lost your wife and were raising Noah alone. I'm sorry, I can't imagine how hard that must be." For a long moment, Cole just stared at her, and she could see him trying to decide whether to shut down completely or something else. "2 years ago," he said finally, the words coming out rough and reluctant. "Car accident. She was driving home from visiting her sister. Drunk driver ran a red light." He looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully now in Hannah's arms. He was 6 months old. Doesn't remember her at all, and that's— He trailed off, swallowing hard. "Heartbreaking," Hannah finished quietly. "Yeah." Cole took a breath, seemed to pull himself back together. "I tell him about her. Every night before bed, I tell him something about his mom. What she was like, what she loved, how much she wanted him. I show him pictures. I don't know if he understands, but someday he will. Someday he'll know who she was." Hannah felt tears prick at her eyes. "That's beautiful, Cole. Truly." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw the loneliness in his eyes, the weight of carrying everything alone for so long. "It's hard," he admitted, and she could tell the admission cost him something. "Harder than I ever imagined. I thought I was prepared. Thought I could handle anything, but raising a child alone, trying to be everything he needs, protecting him from—" He stopped again, seemed to remember who he was talking to. "It's hard." "You're doing a good job," Hannah said firmly. "I can see that. He's loved, he's cared for, he's safe. That's what matters." "Is it?" Cole's voice was bitter now. "Is that enough? Am I enough? What happens when he's older and starts asking questions I can't answer? What happens when he realizes his life isn't normal, that his father isn't—" He cut himself off sharply. "Sorry. You don't need to hear this." "Maybe I do," Hannah said gently. Or maybe you need to say it. Either way, I'm listening. Noah made a small sound and Hannah adjusted her hold, continuing the gentle rocking. The baby was fully asleep now, his breathing deep and even, his small hand still clutching the teddy bear. Cole watched them for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I never intended to be a single father. Never imagined doing this alone. Sarah, my wife, she was supposed to be here. We were supposed to figure this out together. But life doesn't care about your plans, it just happens. And you either adapt or you drown. You're adapting, Hannah observed. You're here, aren't you? At 3 a.m, doing whatever it takes to help your son sleep. That's not drowning. That's fighting. Some days it feels the same. But there was less edge in his voice now. More resignation. I have help. People who work for me, who handle logistics. But at night when he can't sleep, when he's scared or sick or just needs his dad, that's all me. And I wouldn't want it any other way, but God, I'm so tired. The raw honesty in those last words struck Hannah hard. This wasn't the guarded, careful man who'd walked through the door. This was someone at the end of their rope, too exhausted to maintain the facade. When's the last time you slept through the night, she asked. Cole actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. I don't remember. Months, probably. Between Noah's teething and nightmares and just general refusal to sleep alone. He shrugged. I catch sleep when I can. Power naps between meetings. An hour here and there when he finally crashes. It's fine. It's not fine. You need rest too. Tell that to a 1-year-old. But his tone was softer now, almost fond. He's worth it, though. Every sleepless night, every moment of exhaustion. I look at him and I know. He's everything. The only thing that matters. Hannah looked down at Noah, at his peaceful sleeping face, and felt something shift in her chest. He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. Cole set down his coffee cup. He's the reason I keep going. The reason I'm trying to... Again, he stopped himself. That careful control reasserting itself. He's everything. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, just the sound of Noah's soft breathing and the ever-present hum of the fluorescent lights. Then Noah stirred, making a small, distressed sound, and immediately Cole stepped closer. I should take him, Cole said reluctantly. He'll wake up confused if he realizes he's not with me. Hannah carefully transferred the baby back to his father, and Cole settled him against his shoulder with practiced ease. Noah mumbled something unintelligible, then relaxed immediately, clearly recognizing his father's hold, his scent, his presence. Thank you, Cole said quietly, for listening, for understanding, for... He gestured vaguely with his free hand. I don't usually talk about this, about any of this. Why did you tonight? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw him struggling with the answer. Finally, he said, because you asked, and because you didn't judge. Most people, they look at me and they see. He trailed off. They see what they expect to see. You looked at me and saw a tired father. That's rare. Maybe people just need to look closer, Hannah suggested. Maybe people are safer not looking at all. The warning was back in his voice, subtle but present. My life isn't simple, Hannah. It's complicated in ways I can't explain. And getting close to me, even as a friend, can be dangerous, she finished, thinking of Rita's warnings. Yes, his honesty was stark. I would never hurt you. Want you to know that. But my world, the things I'm involved in, the people around me, they can be unpredictable. And I have enemies. People who would... He looked at Noah, jaw tightening. People who would hurt me by hurting the things I care about. Hannah's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Then why come here? Why risk even this? Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because for 20 minutes, sitting in this diner with you, I don't have to be that person. I can just be a guy with a kid who can't sleep, talking to someone who treats me like I'm human. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I think I'm starting to, Hannah said softly. He looked at her, and the connection between them was almost tangible, something fragile and new and possibly dangerous, but undeniably real. I should go, Cole said, but he didn't move. You should, Hannah agreed, but she didn't step back. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibilities and warnings in equal measure. Finally, Cole took a breath and stepped toward the door. Same time next week? It was phrased as a question, but Hannah heard the hope underneath it. The loneliness that wanted permission to be less alone, even if just for brief moments in an all-night diner. I'll have your coffee ready, she promised. Something that might have been a real smile crossed his face. Black, large. I remember. He pushed through the door and she watched him walk to his car, watched him carefully settle Noah in the car seat, watched him stand there for a moment with his hand on the vehicle's roof, his head bowed like the weight of everything was suddenly too much. Then he got in and drove away into the darkness. Hannah stood at the counter for a long time after he was gone, her arms still remembering the weight of Noah, her mind still processing everything Cole had revealed. Rita emerged from the kitchen where she'd clearly been listening to at least some of the conversation. "Hannah?" she said, and her voice was full of concern. "Honey, I know he seems different than what people say," Hannah interrupted. "I know. He's not what I expected. That doesn't mean he's safe." Rita came closer, her expression serious. "Whatever you're feeling, whatever you think you see when you look at him, just be careful. Please, for your own sake." "I'm just serving him coffee, Rita. You're holding his baby at 3 in the morning and talking about his dead wife. That's not just serving coffee. That's getting involved." Hannah couldn't argue with that, so she didn't try. After Rita went back to the kitchen, Hannah pulled out her phone and did something she probably shouldn't have. She searched for Cole Matthews. The results were sparse. A few mentions in business articles about property development and investment firms. A brief obituary for Sarah Matthews from 2 years ago that mentioned her husband Cole and infant son Noah. Nothing that confirmed or denied what Rita had implied about his connections to organized crime. But there was a photo, a formal shot from some charity gala, taken about 3 years ago. Cole in an expensive suit, standing next to a beautiful woman with dark hair and a warm smile. Sarah, presumably. They looked happy. They looked like any other wealthy couple at a formal event. Hannah closed the search and put her phone away. She should stay away, should keep her distance, should listen to Rita's warnings and her own common sense. But she couldn't stop thinking about the exhaustion in Cole's eyes, or the tenderness in his voice when he talked to his son, or the way he'd opened up to her, someone he barely knew, because she'd treated him like a person instead of a reputation. 1 week, she told herself. She'd see him again in 1 week, serve him coffee, maybe talk a bit. That didn't mean anything. That didn't have to be dangerous. She almost believed it. The week passed slowly. Hannah worked her shifts, dealt with her landlord, got an extension on rent, thank God for the generous tips, got her car fixed. The mechanic was sympathetic and only charged her for parts, and tried not to think about Cole Matthews. She failed spectacularly at that last part. Tuesday night arrived, and Hannah found herself watching the door more than usual, anticipating the sound of the bell, the sight of Cole walking in with Noah. 2:30 came and went, then 3, then 3:30. By 4 a.m., Hannah had accepted that he wasn't coming. Disappointment sat heavy in her chest, sharper than it should have been for someone she barely knew, someone she'd only talked to twice. "He's not coming," Rita said gently, reading Hannah's mood with her usual accuracy. "I know. It's probably for the best, honey. I know that too." But knowing something didn't make it easier to accept. The rest of the week followed the same pattern. Tuesday nights became the shift Hannah both anticipated and dreaded. She told herself she didn't care, that it didn't matter, that Cole was just a customer who'd found somewhere else to drive when his son couldn't sleep. The third Tuesday, something different happened. Hannah was restocking the coffee station when the bell chimed. She looked up automatically, already knowing it wouldn't be him, already preparing for disappointment, and froze. 2 men had walked in. Not Cole. Different men. One tall and heavily built, the other shorter with calculating eyes. They wore suits that were expensive but not quite as expensive as Cole's, and the way they scanned the diner, the way they moved. Hannah had learned to read people in this job. These men weren't here for coffee. They sat in a booth near the door, and Hannah approached with menus and a smile that felt plastic on her face. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you off with some coffee?" "Coffee," the taller one said. His eyes swept over her, assessing. "You work here regularly? Late night shifts?" Every instinct Hannah had was screaming danger. "Pretty regularly, yeah. What can I get you besides coffee?" "Information," the shorter one said, and his smile was all wrong. Too sharp, too calculated. "We're looking for someone. Tall guy, dark hair, usually comes in late with a kid. You seen anyone like that?" Hannah's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. Played dumb. "We get a lot of people through here. Can you be more specific?" "Specific like Cole Matthews," the taller one said, watching her carefully for a reaction. Hannah shrugged, hoping they couldn't see her hands trembling. "Name doesn't ring a bell. Like I said, we get a lot of people. I don't usually ask for names." The shorter one leaned forward. He would have left an impression. Expensive car, expensive clothes, baby boy about a year old. Think hard. I'm sorry, Hannah said firmly. I really can't help you, but I can get you that coffee if you'd like, or food if you're hungry. They exchanged a look, and Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. Then the taller one stood up. We're good, he said. But if you do remember seeing someone like that, there are people who'd appreciate knowing when he comes around. People who pay well for information. He pulled out a business card, just a phone number, no name, and set it on the table. Think about it. They left without ordering anything, and Hannah stood frozen in the middle of the diner, staring at that card. Rita came out of the kitchen, her face pale. Hannah, I know. Hannah's voice was shaking now that they were gone. I know. You need to tell him. If he comes back, you need to tell him people are looking for him. What if he doesn't come back? Rita didn't have an answer for that. 4 more days passed. Hannah kept the business card in her apron pocket, a constant reminder of a world she didn't understand, but that was apparently more real than she'd wanted to believe. Sunday night, technically Monday morning. The bell chimed at 2:43 a.m. Cole walked in with Noah, and the relief Hannah felt was so intense it almost brought tears to her eyes. Coffee? She asked, and her voice came out more emotional than she'd intended. Cole stopped, really looking at her. What's wrong? Nothing, Hannah realized Rita had disappeared into the kitchen, giving them privacy. You didn't come last week, or the week before. I was worried. Something flickered across his face. I stayed away on purpose. Thought it was safer. For you. Safer? Yeah. He moved to the counter, but he didn't sit. Noah was awake this time, looking around with curious eyes. I thought if I didn't come back, you could just be the nice waitress who served me coffee a couple times, not someone who could get caught up in my mess. 2 men came in, Hannah blurted out. 4 days ago. They were looking for you, asking questions. Cole went very still. What did you tell them? Nothing. I said I didn't know who they were talking about. She pulled out the business card, handed it to him. They left this, said people would pay for information about when you come around. Cole took the card, his jaw tightening as he looked at it. Did they threaten you? Not directly, but it was implied. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself. Cole, what's going on? He looked at her for a long moment, clearly warring with himself about how much to say. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and controlled. I told you my life was complicated, that I had enemies. I meant it. There are people who want to hurt me, who are looking for ways to get to me, and being seen with me, even innocently, can make you a target. Rita told me, Hannah said quietly, about what you do, what people say you're involved in, and you still talk to me, still held my son. He sounded genuinely surprised. You've never been anything but honest with me, and I've never felt threatened by you, only, she searched for the right word, protected. Like even just being here, you were making sure nothing could hurt me. Cole's expression softened, but there was pain in his eyes. I can't protect you if they know you're connected to me. That's why I stayed away. But then tonight, he looked down at Noah, who was watching Hannah with recognition. I couldn't stay away. I told myself just one more time, just to make sure you were okay, and then I'd stop coming. I'd find somewhere else. What if I don't want you to find somewhere else? Hannah heard herself say. Cole looked at her sharply. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Hannah came around the counter, standing closer to him than was probably wise. I know this is complicated. I know there's danger. I know I should be smart and stay away. But for 3 weeks, I've been serving strangers coffee and going through the motions and feeling like I'm just existing. And then you walk in, and suddenly I feel alive again. I feel like there's something worth looking forward to. Is that crazy? Yes, Cole said bluntly, but his eyes were intense on hers. It's crazy and dangerous, and you should absolutely send me away. Are you going to go if I ask? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, no, I should, but I won't, because I feel the same way. These past 3 weeks staying away from here, I've been miserable. Everything felt heavier, lonelier, and I kept thinking about you, about talking to you, about how you made me feel like maybe I wasn't completely lost. They stood there, inches apart, Noah between them, watching this exchange with solemn eyes. So what do we do? Hannah whispered. I don't know, Cole admitted. This is uncharted territory for me. I don't let people in. It's safer that way. But you, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You make me want to try. Hannah's breath caught at the touch. Then try. We'll figure it out together. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Cole smiled then. A real smile. The first she'd seen from him. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, less burdened. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between dropped dreams and late-night coffee shifts, Hannah said, smiling back. Noah reached out toward Hannah, making grabbing motions with his small hands. Cole laughed. Actually laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. I think someone missed you, he said. Hannah took Noah into her arms, and the baby immediately snuggled against her, content. I missed him too. Missed both of you. Cole's expression grew serious again. We need to be careful. Those men who came here, they work for someone who wants to hurt me. If they think you matter to me, they'll use that. What do we do? For now, we keep things quiet. I'll have people watch the diner, make sure no one's paying too much attention. You keep doing what you're doing, being careful, not volunteering information. And he paused. We take this slow, figure out what this is before anyone else does. What is this? Hannah asked. Cole looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. Something I didn't think I'd ever have again. Something that feels like hope. I like that answer, Hannah said softly. For the next hour they talked, really talked, about Noah's first steps he'd taken last week, about Hannah's online design work finally picking up, about small moments of joy in difficult lives. Noah fell asleep in Hannah's arms, and she sat in a booth while Cole sat across from her, and for a little while the diner felt like the safest place in the world. When Cole finally had to leave, the goodbye felt different this time. Less like an ending, more like a beginning. Same time next week? He asked at the door. Wouldn't miss it, Hannah promised. He smiled, then left. Hannah stood at the counter, watching his taillights disappear, and realized everything had changed. She was involved now, whether that was smart or not, whether that was safe or not, and somehow she couldn't bring herself to regret it. 3 weeks changed everything. Cole's visits became routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, like clockwork. Sometimes he stayed 20 minutes, sometimes an hour. They talked about everything and nothing. Noah's latest milestone, Hannah's design projects, the small joys and frustrations of daily life. The diner became their sanctuary, a pocket of normalcy in otherwise complicated lives. But sanctuaries don't last forever. It was a Saturday afternoon, Hannah's day off, when she saw them at Riverside Park. She'd gone for a walk, needing air and sunlight after too many overnight shifts. The park was busy with families, joggers, people walking dogs, normal, safe. Then she saw Cole pushing Noah in a baby swing, and her heart did something complicated in her chest. He looked different in daylight. The expensive clothes were replaced with jeans and a dark sweater. His hair was slightly messy from the wind. He looked younger, more relaxed, more like just another father spending time with his son. Noah squealed with delight as the swing moved, his little hands gripping the chains, his face pure joy. Hannah approached slowly, not wanting to startle them. Fancy meeting you here. Cole turned, surprise flashing across his face before it softened into a smile. Hannah, I didn't expect. He paused. This is outside our usual meeting place. I know. She moved closer, and Noah immediately started making excited sounds, reaching toward her. But I think someone's happy to see me. He's not the only one, Cole said quietly, and the admission made Hannah's cheeks warm. She sat on the bench near the swings, and Cole slowed Noah's momentum until the baby was just gently rocking. They fell into easy conversation, and for a while, it felt almost ordinary. 2 people in a park, a child playing nearby, sunshine filtering through autumn leaves. Then a man approached. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and an expression that suggested he didn't smile often. He wore dark clothes and moved with military precision. Cole noticed him immediately, his entire posture shifting from relaxed to alert. Boss, the man said, nodding to Cole. Then his eyes moved to Hannah, assessing. Everything okay here? Fine, Marcus. Cole's voice held authority. This is Hannah. Hannah, this is Marcus. He works with me. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he'd already known exactly who Hannah was. Ma'am, he looked back at Cole. Just checking in, making sure you have what you need. It was coded language. Hannah could tell that much. Marcus wasn't just checking if Cole needed anything. He was assessing threat levels, ensuring security, doing whatever people in his position did. We're good. Cole confirmed. Take a walk. I'll call if I need you. Marcus nodded and moved away, but Hannah noticed he didn't leave the park. He positioned himself near the entrance, watching. He's protective, Hannah observed. It's his job. Cole lifted Noah from the swing and the baby immediately reached for Hannah. Cole hesitated, then carefully transferred his son to her arms. He's also one of the few people I trust completely. Hannah settled Noah on her hip, and the baby grabbed a handful of her hair, fascinated. How many people is that? That you trust completely? 3. Marcus, my lawyer, and my son. He paused. Maybe 4 now. The implication hung between them, that she was becoming someone he trusted, someone who mattered. Cole, Hannah said carefully, I know we've been keeping things light, just coffee and conversation, but I need to understand more about your world. The real version, not just what I've pieced together. He was quiet for a long moment, watching Noah play with Hannah's hair. Finally, he spoke. My family has been involved in certain businesses for 3 generations. My grandfather started it, my father expanded it, and I inherited it all when he passed 5 years ago. Some of those businesses are completely legitimate. Real estate, logistics, investments. Others exist in gray areas. And some, he trailed off. Some I've been trying to phase out. Why? Because of him. Cole nodded toward Noah. When Sarah died, when I was suddenly alone with a 6-month-old baby who needed his father to be present and alive and there, I realized I couldn't keep living that life, couldn't keep making choices that might take me away from him. So I've been working to transition everything to legitimate operations. But people who've benefited from the old way of doing things aren't happy about it. Like the men who came to the diner. Like them, yes. They work for someone who wants to maintain the status quo, who sees my changes as weakness, as betrayal. His jaw tightened. Who would hurt Noah to get to me if given the chance? Hannah's arms instinctively tightened around the baby. That won't happen. No, it won't, because I won't let it. Cole's voice was steel. I have security, resources, people who make sure Noah is protected every second. But it's a constant calculation, who's watching, who's listening, who might see an opportunity. And I'm an opportunity, Hannah said quietly, understanding. If they know you care about me, they'll use that. Yes, he looked at her directly. That's why this is dangerous. Why I should have stayed away. Why even being seen together like this is a risk I shouldn't be taking. But you're taking it anyway. I am. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Because being around you makes me feel human again. Makes me remember there's more to life than threats and calculations and trying to keep everyone at arm's length. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. What kind of things? Connection. Trust. Maybe. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Maybe even something like a future that isn't just about survival. Hannah's breath caught. Noah had fallen asleep against her shoulder, oblivious to the intensity of the moment. I want those things too. Even knowing the risks? Even knowing the risks. Cole reached out, his hand cupping her cheek with such tenderness that Hannah's eyes stung with unexpected tears. You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, she whispered. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Come to dinner, tomorrow night, at my house. Let me show you the full picture, where Noah lives, what my daily life looks like, and then you can decide if this is really something you want to be part of. I already know. Decide anyway, he interrupted gently, with all the information, with eyes open, because once you're truly in, once people know you matter to me, there's no going back to being just the waitress who served me coffee. Hannah understood what he was offering, a chance to see his world completely, to make an informed choice about whether to continue this connection. It was honest and fair and terrifying. Tomorrow, she agreed. What time? 7. I'll send you the address. He leaned in closer, and for a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss would have been. Thank you, he murmured, for not running. Thank you for giving me a reason to stay. They left the park separately, Cole and Noah first, with Marcus falling into step beside them, then Hannah 10 minutes later. The precaution felt both necessary and sad, a reminder that even simple moments required strategy. The next evening, Hannah stood outside Cole's address, staring at the house. It was in an exclusive neighborhood, set back from the street with high walls and security cameras visible even from the gate. When she pressed the intercom button, Cole's voice answered immediately. Come in, the gate's opening. The driveway curved through landscaped grounds before revealing the house itself. Modern, elegant, but not ostentatious. Warm lights glowed from the windows, and she could see children's toys scattered across the front porch, humanizing the fortress-like exterior. Cole opened the door before she could knock. He wore dark jeans and a gray sweater, his feet bare, his hair slightly damp like he'd recently showered. He looked relaxed and domestic, and impossibly handsome. "You came," he said, and she heard the relief in his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I worried." He stepped back, letting her enter. "Welcome to our home." The interior was surprising. Yes, it was clearly expensive, but it was also lived in and warm. Noah's toys were everywhere. Framed photos lined the walls. Noah at various ages, Cole and Sarah on their wedding day, family moments frozen in time. The kitchen smelled amazing, something Italian cooking on the stove. "You cook?" Hannah asked, surprised. "I had to learn. Noah's allergic to several things, and I needed to know exactly what was going into his food. Turns out I'm not terrible at it." He led her to the kitchen, where Noah was in a high chair, happily making a mess with what looked like pasta. "Hannah!" The baby's face lit up when he saw her, and he reached out sticky hands. She laughed, moving to him automatically, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Hi, sweet boy. Making a mess?" "His favorite hobby," Cole said, and the domesticity of the moment, the three of them in this kitchen like some kind of makeshift family, made Hannah's chest tight. Dinner was easy, comfortable. They ate pasta while Noah played nearby, and they talked about small things, favorite movies, childhood memories, dreams they'd had before life got complicated. Cole showed her around the house, including Noah's room with its carefully chosen decorations and the baby monitor system that Cole admitted he checked obsessively. After Noah went to bed, they sat in the living room with wine, and the conversation grew deeper. "I can't promise you easy," Cole said quietly. "I can't promise you safe or simple or anything resembling normal. My life is complicated and sometimes scary, and people I care about become targets. I understand. Do you?" He turned to face her fully. "Because once this becomes real, once people know you're important to me, everything changes. You'll need security. You'll need to be careful about where you go, who you talk to. Your freedom gets smaller, and that's not fair to you. What if I think you're worth it?" Cole's expression was pained. "What if you're wrong? What if I'm right?" Hannah countered. "What if we're both tired of being alone? What if this, whatever this is between us, is real and rare and worth fighting for?" He looked at her for a long moment, then set down his wine glass and moved closer. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah. Didn't think I could. Didn't think I should. But then you walked into my life with your honesty and your strength and your complete lack of fear, and suddenly I'm feeling things I thought were buried with my wife. That's not betraying her," Hannah said softly. "That's honoring her by choosing to live again." Cole's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I want to kiss you, have wanted to for weeks. But once I do, once we cross that line, then we cross it together." Hannah closed the distance between them. "Stop protecting me from yourself and just kiss me, Cole." So he did. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of what it meant. Then it deepened, became more certain, more real. Cole's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and Hannah melted into him, into the warmth and strength and unexpected tenderness of this complicated man. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "No going back now," he murmured. "Good," Hannah whispered back. "I don't want to go back." They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, savoring the shift from possibility to reality. Then Cole's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Someone followed you here tonight." His voice was controlled but urgent. "Marcus just spotted them. They've been sitting outside since you arrived." Fear spiked through Hannah's chest. "What do we do?" "You stay here tonight, it's safer. In the morning, Marcus will take you home with security." He was already texting, fingers moving rapidly. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. They know now. They know you matter. Cole, I need you to listen carefully." He gripped her shoulders, his eyes intense. "Things are going to get more complicated now. There will be precautions, security measures. I need to know you're safe, which means I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Hannah thought about the men at the diner, about the threat implicit in their questions, thought about Noah sleeping upstairs, innocent and vulnerable, Thought about Cole, trying so hard to protect everyone while carrying everything alone. I trust you, she said firmly. Tell me what to do. Relief flashed across his face. Stay close, follow instructions, and know that I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe. I know. She pulled him into another kiss, this one fierce and full of certainty. We're in this together now. Together, he agreed against her lips. Whatever comes next. Outside, in the darkness, someone watched and waited. The game had changed, and the stakes had just gotten much, much higher. The next 48 hours were a blur of tension and decisions. Hannah stayed at Cole's house under Marcus's watchful protection, while Cole handled what he called necessary arrangements. She didn't ask for details. Some things, she was learning, were better left unsaid. But on the third morning, Cole returned looking exhausted but relieved. It's done, he said simply, pulling Hannah into his arms. I made a deal. What kind of deal? The kind that costs everything and saves everyone. He looked at her seriously. I provided information to federal authorities about people involved in illegal operations. In exchange, they're handling the threats against us. Hannah's eyes widened. Cole, that's dangerous, I know, but it was necessary. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm out now. Really out. No more gray areas, no more looking over my shoulder wondering if today's the day someone comes for Noah. I'm transitioning everything to legitimate businesses. It'll be hard and we'll lose money, but we'll be safe. What about the people who wanted to hurt you? Being handled as we speak. Legal consequences, not... He trailed off. Not the old way. I'm done with that life, Hannah. Completely. She saw the truth in his eyes. The relief, the fear, the hope. What happens now? Now we figure out how to be a normal family. He smiled slightly. Or as normal as we can be. I'll be working long hours getting the new businesses established. Money will be tighter than before, and there will still be security precautions at least for a while. But Noah will be safe. You'll be safe. That's all that matters. And us? Hannah whispered. Cole cupped her face in his hands. Us is the whole point. You and Noah. You're my future. If you'll have me, I'll have you, she said without hesitation. All of you. The complicated parts, the difficult parts, the parts still healing. All of it. His kiss was answer enough. 3 months later, the diner looked the same as always. Fluorescent lights humming, coffee brewing, the familiar comfort of late-night routine. But everything had changed. Hannah poured 3 coffees, 1 black for Cole, 1 with cream for herself, and a small cup of warm milk for Noah, who sat in a booster seat between them. The baby had grown, his vocabulary expanding daily, his personality bright and curious. Mama, Noah said, reaching for Hannah's hand. The words still made her heart squeeze. Cole had started encouraging it last month, and Noah had taken to it immediately. She wasn't trying to replace Sarah, would never try to replace her, but she could be something new, something needed. I'm here, baby, she said softly, squeezing his little hand. Cole watched them with an expression that held everything. Gratitude, love, the quiet peace of a man who'd found his way home after being lost for so long. Remember the first night? Hannah asked. When you walked in with him? I remember thinking you looked at me like I was human instead of a reputation. Cole smiled. I remember going home and not being able to stop thinking about you. I remember seeing exhaustion in your eyes, and something else. What? Hope, like maybe, just maybe things could get better. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Was I right? Cole looked at Noah, then at Hannah, then around the diner that had become their beginning. You were right. Things did get better. They got better the moment you decided not to be afraid. I was terrified, Hannah admitted. Me too. He kissed the top of her head. But we did it anyway. Rita emerged from the kitchen, saw the 3 of them together, and smiled. You know, most people don't bring their families to their workplace. Most people don't fall in love over late-night coffee, Hannah countered. Fair point. Rita winked at Noah. And I suppose I don't mind, seeing as how happy you are. Happy. Such a simple word for such a profound change. Hannah looked at Cole, at this man who'd been so lost and alone, who'd fought so hard to build something better. Looked at Noah, thriving and loved and safe. Looked at her own life, transformed from barely surviving to truly living. Same time next week? Cole asked, echoing those first careful words. Every week, Hannah promised. For the rest of our lives. And in a diner at the edge of everywhere, under fluorescent lights that had witnessed countless stories, a family born from shadows found its light.